So, X. It feels like there's more to go in that title than just X. I am incredibly interested to see what you think, because this might be one where we've got different opinions, but I don't know. I don't want to jump the gun, as it were. So, what did you think?
So X reminded me a lot of, like those kind of old, that like Friday the 13th, like that kind of style of movie. I mean, it almost looked like that kind of style of movie, like it was shot in. So I think X is based in the late 70s, whereas Friday the 13th is based in like the early 80s. So not too much difference.
Yeah.
And I just felt like this movie could have been really bad. I think the script itself and just the basic premise is just, it's like all the ingredients for just a really corny, cheesy B movie. But I just think, I think it was handled pretty well. It was better than it deserved to be, I felt.
Yeah. That's an astute observation, I think. I mean, do you remember, because our feelings differed on Friday the 13th as well. And I think it's the same thing again. It's like, I don't think I enjoy slasher films very much.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like in general, as a not a genre, a subgenre of horror, they never stand up to like other films that we've seen, which is fair enough, because like you say, it is what it is.
Sure.
I would completely agree with you that I feel like this is a better version of a lot of the slashers. It has a lot more body or depth to it. But it is still a slasher.
I think it's that A24 logo. Whenever it pops up at the beginning of a horror movie, it just fills me with confidence. It's one of these kind of like seal of approval. Like for me, for horror movies, whenever I see like the Blumhouse logo appear in front of a horror movie, I'm like, okay, this is going to be good, or this will be interesting. And now it's like the same with A24. Whenever I see that pop up, I just feel like, okay, this is going to be something artsy or a little bit classy or a little bit something that'll have an ounce of integrity. It's probably a silly thing to say, but I don't know, something about that logo along with the Blumhouse logo that just fills me with joy in a way where studio logos really don't do that for me anymore. Like if I see Disney or Warner or Universal or Marvel or anything like that, I'm kind of just like, okay, whatever, But when I see Blumhouse and A24, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I feel like A24 has always been a hit in my view of the horror films that I have seen or the independent films that I've seen. And the same with Blumhouse. I think with other production companies, they have so many misses that sometimes it just like doesn't make a difference whether they're Disney or not, which is sad, because I do remember when I was younger, like Pixar, for example, I used to get so excited about Pixar films because I just loved them. And you don't really get that anymore. But I think you're right, A24 does actually give it credence, because they're not gonna be a production company for a really like high level basic film anymore.
It's been a long time since I've watched a horror movie where the gore kind of made me squirm a little bit.
Yes.
And I think it was firstly the bit where who's the old lady? What's her name again?
Is it Pearl?
Pearl, that's it. Yeah. And she stabs the cinematographer in the neck and just repeatedly stabs him in the neck.
And you can like hear it, and
oh my gosh, that did not stop. It was relentless, and I was like physically kind of like squirming in my seat.
Yeah, I agree. I remember vividly, because I was eating avocado on toast as the millennial I am. I had to stop eating it, and that's not usual because I'm pretty good with gore and stuff. But you're right, this is a very visceral film. I think with the older slasher films like Friday the 13th, it's so obviously fake because they don't have good CGI or prosthetics and things. But this one, like it looked as real as I think it could ever look.
Yeah, it felt like every like blood, like even right at the beginning where it showed the cow that had been hit by the truck, like, and they were shoveling the guts onto the roadside. Like any time there was anything bloody, it felt like they just packed like a plastic bag full of like, I don't know, cow entrails or meat, and they just like blew it up, and everything felt so real. Like none of it felt computer generated. It all felt like physical special effects, which kind of add to the whole 70s aesthetic of the movie, because back then you would not have had, it would have been models and, you know, like squibs and stuff like that. It would not have been anything rendered in a computer. So
I appreciated it as well. And I think when I first saw that cow, I was like, oh, this is going to be a really gory film because they've shown that much of the cow. There's going to be guts and gross stuff going forward as well. I think it was like a little nod to everyone to be like, be careful. Like, this is a pretty intense, and it was.
Yeah. I did not know Mia Goth played the villain, Pearl. I had no idea throughout the entire watching of the movie that it was the same actress playing like a double role. Did you know? Did you pick it up?
I mean, it was one of the things. So one of the things that annoyed me about this film was that I thought they put too much. So I didn't realize it was her at the beginning. Yeah. And I thought they just decided to use a really young actress and put loads of prosthetics on her because I could tell that she wasn't old. Something about her felt off. And it kind of took me away from the film because it looked too cartoony or too like staged because I could tell that she wasn't old. I would have much preferred to have a proper old woman in that role, I think, personally. Because then I Googled it, and I specifically Googled why they had chosen to do that, and that's when I found out that it was her, and I was like, oh, okay. That makes more sense, but it doesn't. For me, it pulled me out of the film a little bit too much than giving it the metaphor that she will still grow old just like Pearl did and that kind of stuff. But I don't know, that annoyed me. And I think the husband as well, the old man, was again like he just felt a little bit fake and like he was wearing a costume of an old man.
It's funny you say that because with him, I felt there's definitely prosthetics being used and makeup being used. But I mean, maybe I'm just stupid or something, but I did not pick up the fact that Pearl was played by a young actress. I just thought she was like a middle-aged woman who they dressed up a little bit to be older than she was, but I had no idea she was like in her late 20s or early 30s or however old Mia Goth is. Oh,
it was very good. Like the prosthetics, everything was incredible. But I spent a lot of the time wondering, the reason why I thought they were using a young woman in prosthetics was that she was going to do something like crazy and they needed a younger person to be able to do that, like stunts or something. Like, because I was thinking like, why wouldn't they just cast a really old woman in this role? Like, is there something that she does that needs like a young body to be able to do? And that isn't really what happened. It was just the fact that she was playing a dual role and it was supposed to show like the mirroring of the old and the young. They did a good job, but I don't know. It felt like it didn't serve enough of a purpose for me in the film to warrant me not thinking that they were caricatures of old people.
Yeah, because X has a prequel called Pearl. There's another movie called Pearl.
Right. I was going to ask you about this.
Yeah. So I know. So prior to watching this, I knew that Ty West and Mia Goth had worked again on another horror movie, which released the same year, because I think X came out at the beginning of last year and Pearl came out towards the end, like the later part of last year. So I was aware of that, but I had no idea that was a prequel to this one.
Yeah.
And from what I'd read online, Pearl was like, the script for Pearl was greenlit before they'd even started making X. So I think maybe Ty West knew that. So Mia Goth is in Pearl playing a younger version of Pearl.
Yeah.
So that's probably why. So the whole thing with casting her again playing dual role is probably totally intentional.
That makes so much more sense. That clears it up because the other thing was, while I was watching it, I've seen loads of like Instagram videos of Pearl at the film, and I was really confused because it's Mia Goth playing like a Western character with an accent and saying like she's a star, or I'm a star, which she says in this film. So I was like, how has Mia Goth done two films recently that both have this as the kind of like main thing? But this makes sense that it is actually a prequel to the film we were watching. Yeah.
There's actually another sequel coming out, and I think it's in post-production like right now. It's called Maxine, but the X and Maxine is like a triple X.
Right.
So I don't know if that's also in reference to porn industry or something. I don't know.
It must be, yeah. I mean, I could see them doing more with it. I could see Maxine as a character kind of, I don't know, becoming a very strong, heroic character, or going the other way and becoming kind of a villain in some way.
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, there was a few things for me, seeing this film as just standalone, that I thought wasn't needed. Like
Yeah.
the prosthetics on the old woman was one of them, and also the ending where you find out that Maxine's father is the evangelist or preacher on the TV.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, why are we finding this out now? I don't know if I've just missed something, but surely that would have made more sense to be at the beginning and then see the difference between her now and then. It just felt like, oh, and by the way, she was the preacher's daughter. Okay, bye. And I'm guessing that might be in the sequel, maybe.
That might be. Yeah, I think that might be referenced in the prequel, because I think it shows a young. No, it's not. It's Maxine is the modern day one, not Pearl. Yeah, maybe it'll be in the sequel. But I think I don't know if it's some kind of social commentary on, these kind of radical religious people, and I don't know. I don't know what it is, but maybe there's some modern day parallel with crazy religious nut jobs in modern day America, and I don't know if there's some kind of like far right metaphor here. I don't know. I'm struggling to draw a line between them, but maybe someone smarter will know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see how it's a commentary on the idea that you can push somebody so far into being strict in their lives that they'll go the opposite way, and that you need to give someone freedom in order to grow. And I think that was one thing I liked about the film in terms of the subtext, was basically saying, like, you should probably indulge in a little bit of sin, otherwise you're going to turn into these crazy old people who are so repressed and have no kind of ability to have like control over their sexuality and be free, because they clearly grew up very sheltered. And, it's quite nice to be like, yeah, these porn stars were the heroes of the film in terms of like they're on this side, and then the villains were the old kind of religious people. I like that. I'm like, yeah, that's a good thing to say. Just like give into sin a little bit.
Because the youngsters, they were so free. Like, they did not care what society thought, what their parents thought. They were just doing what they wanted to do and just be free. Whereas the old people were the opposite of free, which is kind of like trapped or imprisoned. And in their repression, in their bodies, they're just like, they're trapped by time. Whereas these guys have youth on their side. They've got so many years ahead of them. Whereas the old people are still trapped in past memories of, like their previous glories. Oh, when I was young, I was a dancer and I was so beautiful and blah, 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 And that in itself is quite relatable or quite terrifying. Like, I never used to think about things like that. You know how like they looked at the youngsters with like, they looked at their youth with like envious eyes throughout the whole movie. Like, if I watched this movie about 5 years ago, I would never have thought twice about it. I just thought, these old people, they're crazy. But it's so freaking weird, because the older I get and the younger everyone around me gets, because I remember whenever I used to work anywhere, I was always one of the youngest people wherever I worked, surrounded by these old over-the-hill people. But now I'm not in that position anymore. And I'm sure there's loads of people that aren't, where suddenly the new whippersnappers that are coming in and they're young and they're full of life and optimism. And I don't know if envy is the right word, but maybe I'm kind of like, I miss that a little bit.
Or it reminds you of growing older when you see people who are younger. Yeah.
And I don't want to become like that bitter person that, but I think so. So the mindset I've got, or have tried to have for a while, is I think what me in 10 years time would look back at me now and would have wanted me to do, if that makes sense. So, and
would have looked back and be like, he was so young then, worrying about these things that absolutely doesn't need to be worrying about.
Yeah, it's like so see, I bought my first digital camera in 2001. It was just like a cheapo 1.3 megapixel camera. Yeah. And it took like 4 double A batteries in it. But anyway, I just started taking pictures all the time. I was like that annoying person that took the camera everywhere with him. And but then at some point in the late 2000s, I backed all that stuff up and moved it all over to Google Photos. And but Google Photos must have somehow scanned all the dates of the photo files and retained all that information. So now, do you use Google Photos, or do you use like Apple Photos or something
Apple,
like that?
Yeah.
But is there a similar function in Apple Photos where randomly it'll say 1 year ago today?
Yes.
Or,
yeah.
Celia, I've got it where it says 18 years ago today. It's like 20 years ago today.
Wow.
I've had 21 years ago today. I've had that. And it's so freaking weird. It's so
Yeah. I mean, if you want to be reminded of growing older, that is a perfect way to do it. Like, hey, have a photo of yourself from 20 years ago.
yes.
How you feeling? Which, does translate to the film. Like, she is literally seeing herself as a youth, whether it's intentional that they're supposed to look the same or not, even though they're being played by the same person. You can, on a very basic level, look at that and be like, I get the sentiment of being jealous of them, and especially when she kind of watches them doing their thing, like making their porn videos.
Yeah.
I can see the reason why she would be jealous of that, and especially when you put in like religion and repression and all this stuff. And it does have to obviously divulge into a slasher film in the end. And I think my issue with slasher films is that it is always the same outcome. Like, there's always going to be lots of murder and lots of gore, and each person's going to get picked off and one person's going to survive. And that's fine. Like, that's what it is. But I think for me, because I already know that's coming, I'm not excited to see what's next, because it's just, I know what it's going to be. And even if those kills are really interesting or really gory or like whatever, it is still going to be the same thing. Do you know what I mean?
No, I totally hear what you're saying. I think, no, I don't disagree with you. And 100% agree. Hear what you're saying. I think it's weird with slashers because, essentially the journey they all make is more or less the same. The template has been in existence for like 40 something years, if not longer.
Yeah.
But I think it's, one film will just try to make a quick buck out of it and just try to copy and paste Friday the 13th. And another film will try to put a peppercorn of an interesting idea into it. And I think X kind of verges on that side where it tries to put something in there which makes, this isn't going to win any Oscars or anything, but it's left a bit of a mark on me in terms of just something to think about. And I mean, we're talking about it right now. And
there is a lot to talk about. And I think that's a good thing about this film. Like, I loved the initial scenes, especially some of the kind of longer scenes of the scenery, and when she's swimming and then the crocodile kind of comes up behind her, that tension that builds, the camera shots, it's clearly a very high quality film. Like, they've really thought about the way that it looks, the feeling that it gives you. The build up is really, it doesn't feel like a B movie, like you said. It has meat on its bones. And it's one of those films, and it's quite similar to what I said about The Menu, which is, I have never seen a plot like this before. Like, there's never been a group of porn stars that go to a cabin and, that's the thing that they're doing is filming porn. It's completely different from other films that we've ever seen. And so I do appreciate it for that. And I think it's, like I said, for a slasher, it's a really good one because it gives a bit of depth to it.
Yeah.
I mean, did you know who Kid Cudi was before the casting of it?
So I know who Kid Cudi is, and but I didn't like. It's weird with him because I've listened to some of his albums over the years, and I've probably seen his face like a billion trillion times just in life generally. But for some reason throughout this movie, I kept thinking, where have I seen this guy before?
Yeah.
I just could not put my finger on where it was from. Then I think it was in the credits roll. It was like Kid Cudi, or maybe I read it somewhere. I don't know. And I just felt so stupid for not.
I think it's probably because like I don't think I've ever seen him with an afro before, or like have hair. I've always seen him with like quite short hair. So I think that probably like threw it off as well. But I was really surprised to see that in the credits. I was like, I didn't realize he had done any acting. I only knew him as a rapper.
I think he's popped up in things.
And he has. Like I was looking at his kind of movie, what they're called, list. And I was surprised about how many things he was in. Even if he had small roles, I was like, okay, he does actually have a portfolio of films that he's been in. And I think he did a good job. Like I didn't feel like it was a celebrity appearance, if you could call it that.
He didn't fit. He integrated into it, like into the cast very well. Like, he didn't feel like, oh, that's that rapper. That's it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. Like same with the lead porns actress. I forgot her name in the
Oh
story.
yeah,
the
I
blonde
love
one.
her. I love that actress because she's in Hairspray.
That's where, like,
Yeah.
I couldn't put my finger on where I'd seen her in, and it was Hairspray. Like,
And
that
it's
was like,
so it's
yeah.
so weird because this is like the opposite of the character she was in
Yes.
Hairspray.
Yes.
But she kind of still looks the same. She has the same like bouffant blonde hair, but she is very different. But yeah, I was very excited. I was also really excited to see Jenna Ortega because I've been obsessed with Wednesday. So it was fun to see her in a different role because apart from You, I hadn't seen her in anything else. And she wasn't the star of the film, obviously she wasn't supposed to be, but it felt like a who's who of things very specific to me. like the actors in it were like, oh, I know her from this, I know her from this. And I don't think I've actually seen I've seen one film with Mia Goth in it, but I think she's going to be one of those stars like Anya Taylor-Joy and people like that who really will dominate the next few years of films because she has star quality 100%.
Much like Anya Taylor-Joy, she has an unusual look about her as well. So,
yeah. Have you ever heard her speaking like off camera?
I don't think I've ever seen her in anything before. I've heard the name, but I didn't know who she was.
She's got a brilliant name as well. Yeah, she has such a interesting voice. She sounds like a baby. Like she's got a really high voice, very soft voice. You have to listen to like an interview of her. So when I saw that she was in this, because I saw her in one other thing, but I can't remember what she sounded like in that. I was really surprised that she can put on like a normal voice because that is not how she sounds normally, and it's just like such a difference from listening to her interviews. But I think you're right, she's an interesting person, and she can act, so that's always a good sign that she's going to do more.
Yeah, I really liked how everybody spoke in this movie. I don't know why, I just enjoy that Southern accent.
I said West earlier, and I was like, that's not right. I meant something else. I can't remember what it was. You're right, Southern accent.
Yeah. I just love that whole first portion of the movie when they're driving to the location and they're all just talking, and the whole thing had this kind of Texas Chainsaw vibe to it. And, and just everything about it. I just loved how they all spoke in that Southern kind of voice, and just the way it was all shot. It felt like it was shot on like 16mm film and stuff. And I just felt like I've never lived through that time period. I mean, I've seen movies from that time period. I grew up on movies from then, but I just felt so nostalgic for this. This time period or location has nothing to do with my life, but I just felt, I don't know why, I just felt
it's like going back to a simpler time, isn't it? Where everybody, even the gas station scenes and them in their rickety old truck, not a phone in sight. I know it's cheesy to say, but it's reminiscent of a time. It's like the American dream almost, of just being able to do exactly what you want when you want and make money from it and live how you like. I mean, what I also loved about it was the heat you could feel from it. Like you could feel that southern heat, and the way that their skin was like sticky. And that's another thing I loved. I don't know how to make this not sound creepy, but I loved the skin and like the bodies in this. They really utilized bodies, obviously through the porn scenes, but also like as the slasher parts of the film as well. It is really visceral, and it's all about the human body and what it looks like and what it does, and it just feels like you could grab it. And it was
I think it's because I think they wanted to emphasize, I'm guessing, I think they maybe put an emphasis on that kind of young firm skin and that young youthful playful. I think the iconic shot for me that kind of stuck into my head, burnt into my mind very early on, is when they're all in the car, and I think when they're driving and Mia Goth is like got her feet on the dashboard at the beginning when they're driving. I think there's something very young and not childlike's not the right word. I think just youthful about even that as a picture. And I think it's total contrast with the villains of the movie. And I think it's just that is one of the things they probably miss. And I think they just, and even the sex scenes, like they are so explicitly something that the villains are unable to.
It's freedom.
Do.
It's a freedom to be able to do those things, which like you say, that the older characters do not have, and they don't feel like they can possess, and that makes them envious. Like even Maxine walking around in her dungarees without a top on underneath. You know, she's just completely free to wear what she wants. She's barely covered, but like it's very youthful as well. What she's wearing is very youthful, and she goes off and she goes swimming because she can, and she'll get naked and she'll go swimming. And yeah, it's just a very different way of being than the older characters.
Yeah, that shot where it's like a bird's eye view and she's right in the center of the frame in the lake.
Yeah,
and she's just swimming there, and all the water around her is just deadly still.
Yeah,
and she's there just flowing, and then obviously that whole crocodile, comes out of nowhere and starts chasing, and she doesn't even realize it's happening. It was almost the same as if because at that same very moment the old lady's spying on her from
she is the crocodile.
Yeah. And
I think one thing that I was worried about when you figure out that it's going to be the old people who are going to do the killing, I was worried that this film would be very unrealistic in the sense of like these young people could overpower these old people very easily, but they managed to not do that by making all of the deaths a surprise to the characters. Like there wasn't like a fight ever. And because that would never have worked because they would have been overpowered. So I'm glad that they really thought through the disparity between the villains and the heroes of the film to make sure that didn't come across like, okay, well that would never happen. Like I thought Pearl's like kind of death where she shoots the shotgun and she fires backwards and then breaks her hip. It sounds funny when you said, but it wasn't funny in the film. That was actually really surprising as an end to her, and I would quite like that. I was like, oh, it wasn't just Maxine killing her, in a normal way. It was like she actually did it to herself because she went way too far, and her body doesn't allow her to do that. And ultimately, it was her body that killed her, which I thought was like a nice ending. And obviously then her head got run over, but still, I think she would have died there anyway.
Oh, that I wasn't expecting,
Yeah. The sound that made as well, it popped, but her head popped, and I was like, I don't like it.
They nailed the gore in this film and the special effects in this film, for sure.
They did. I think I agree with you. The scene where he's being stabbed, that guy's being stabbed at the beginning-ish was the most like gory because the way she was sitting on him, the way she was doing it really slowly as well, it was like, and they were playing one of my favorite songs, Don't Fear the Reaper by the Blue Oyster Cult, and I was like, no, don't ruin this for me. But it does, it's a good song to choose.
She was the Reaper in that scene.
She was the Reaper, and you should fear her. But yeah, I think it would be really interesting to watch Pearl or watch the sequel, because I think that would probably clear up a few of the things that did annoy me about this film, was that it felt like it hadn't finished or it hadn't quite set itself up in the right way.
Yeah, I have no idea what the prequel would be about, and I'm going. I just refuse to read up on it at the moment, but I do want to watch it. I wonder if that's also on Amazon as well. Might check it out. Maybe we could do it as next week's movie or something if you wanted.
Yeah, let's have a look for it. I mean, my guess is that Pearl been like that in a way, like because we know that this is not her first kill because they find that beetle or that car in the lake. And there's, the husband's kind of saying that it's not the first time she's done it. I wonder if the original's kind of like an origin story for Pearl.
It must be, yeah. It's probably her when she's younger or something.
And like when she's younger, she might, I'm just making this up, but she might get jealous of somebody else who's also young, even though they're both young, but she wants to be on top. She wants to be the person who becomes a star, so she'll do anything to get there kind of thing. Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see the difference.